All right, guys, I've got a single MB550 foothold trap. I'm going to show you how to take this trap from factory to ready to put in the ground. Let's go. Just like that. All right, guys, what I have here is a single MB550 foothold trap, and I'm going to show you how to take it from off the shelf to ready to catch coyotes. All right, so the first thing I got to do is I got my pot of wax set on my fish cooker, and I'm gonna go ahead and get that started melting. It's gonna take quite a while for that wax to melt, so that's the first thing that I'm gonna do. All right, literally the next thing I gotta do is I gotta take this trap and unpackage it. Got a zip tie on there. This little zip tie off of here. There we go. All right, so the next thing we want to do is this trap is going to come from the factory with a light coat of grease on it, and we got to get all those smells off. I've got here a bucket with just some Dawn dish detergent in it, and we're just going to take that trap and submerge it in the soapy water and let it coat all those parts. We're going to let it coat all those parts and get that grease off of there, because we want this trap. We don't want a smell on this trap when we put it in the ground. It's going to have all kind of smells on it from the factory, and I just want to wash that grease off and get everything off of there. And you can see my bucket water there. You can see my bucket water's dirty now after having that trap in there. And I used to go about the whole process, kind of old school process, taking the trap, cleaning it, letting it rust up a little bit so that it'll take a dye, and really all the dye, it's kind of like blue in a gun. It'll put some color on that trap to make it not so shiny, but it'll also prevent it from rusting. You need a little light coat of rust to put the dye on there to prevent it from rusting, if that makes sense. But there's a lot of other products out on the market, bulletproof dips and other things that you can use. I've taken the approach, I just take them, get them cleaned, get them set up, and get them waxed and put them in the ground. And then after that first year of use, it's going to have a coat of rust on it, and then I'll go back and dye them if I feel like I need to, because it'll really take that dye pretty good at that point. But all right, we got the grease off this trap. We're gonna rinse this thing off. We'll be right back. All right, got the trap rinsed off. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply my trap tag and make this trap legal. This trap, this MB550 trap, it's a 2-coiled trap. Has an inside jaw spread of just over 5.5 inches. In the state of Georgia, you have to keep your jaw spread under 5 3/4 inches to remain legal. It's just the law, but there's something else you got to take into consideration when you get into using foothold style traps instead of your coon cuffs or dog proof traps, whatever you want to call them. We're going to get a trap tag on here just like we would the dog proof traps. You can see this trap has a base plate on here. You can see this thing is center swiveled on the base plate. And then it's got another crunch proof style swivel down here on the end, and that just makes it so when that coyote or bobcat gets caught, there's no way that they can dislocate that leg or break that foot. This is just a pair of handcuffs that's going to hold them till you get there. It's not gonna break their foot. If it was, I wouldn't be using it. But if it didn't have this center swivel on here, they could twist and dislocate their leg or even break it. So that's why we want a center swivel trap. So I'm gonna grab my tag and slap it on there. So on the tag, we're gonna do it just like we did the dog-proof trap. We're gonna put it on that bottom swivel right underneath the trap, and that just makes it harder for the animal to get to and be able to bite at. And less chance that it's gonna come off once you catch an animal. They'll bite at this trap and try to get free from it. And if you had it down here further on the chain, you could end up losing the tag. And just remember, in order for the trap to stay legal, it's got to have a tag on it. So it's another reason I always carry spares. But putting it on this bottom swivel like this, I haven't lost one yet. So, all right, the next thing I got to do with this trap is I've got to check the pan tension. Okay, and when I say pan tension, I mean the amount of force that it takes to step on this pan to throw this dog and actually spring the trap. Coyotes being my main target, you will catch bobcats and foxes like this as well, but coyotes being the main target, I like to run a good stiff pan tension, 3.5 to 4 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood, because I want all that coyote's weight on that pan when that trap fires, so I get a good deep catch. A lot of people, when they start out, they think a hair trigger is better, but if that coyote's one pad touches that pan and sets it off, and he's able to pull back, or he's not fully committed when he steps on that trap, you end up getting a pad catch, and they can just dislocate that toe and pull out of there sometimes. The way that we figure pan tension on a trap, this device right here, this is a Sullivan's trap tester. You can get them at your trap supply houses. Bryant Southern Snares has these. It's just a spring-loaded device that you push on a pan, and each mark represents a pound of pressure. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 pounds of pan pressure, and you would just depress this on the pan and push down until that trap fired, and that would tell you what your pan tension is. So let's see where this one is from the factory. We've got that trap set, okay? And as you can see, that pan, it's on the dog, but it's not set into that notch. And that's a night latch that's built into that trigger. And the reason they do that is so you get an audible click when you actually arm that trap. So you're gonna drop that pan down till you hear it click. There's the click. So the trap is armed. Let's see, let's check it out. So from the factory, you can see that pan sits pretty level. I like to have a little bit of downward slope, because when I'm using my screen wire pan covers, if my pan is sitting level, I'll tend to get a hump when it runs under this loose jaw, and I'd rather it angle slightly down so that it dives off under that jaw and gives a nice flat setup. But right now, not too bad. So we're gonna flip this loose jaw out of the way, and as long as you work under this loose jaw, you'll never get caught, meaning working on this side. If you work in here, you run the tendency to get caught, but working underneath this jaw will keep that from happening. So we're gonna take our trap pan tester, we're gonna go right in the center of that pan, okay? And we're gonna start pushing down. There's 1 pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, and there we go. 3.5 pounds from the factory, right where I like it. If I needed to adjust that, okay, say it was too light, or excuse me, say it was too heavy, I could take this rod style dog right here and put just an ever so slight bend in this dog downward, and that would lower my pan tension, okay? If it's the opposite way, if it was too light and we needed to add some pan tension to it, instead of bending that thing down, I'm just gonna bend it up ever so slightly and keep checking it till I get the pan tension that I need. But 3.5 pounds from the factory, I'm ready to go. All right, We're talking about our pan tension. We got it set where we wanted it. If we needed to angle our pan, which I'm going to adjust that a little bit, this device right here fits right on this part of the frame of the trap where the dog is, okay? And you would just pull backwards if you needed to bring your pan up, or push it forward if you needed to tilt your pan down. So I'm going to tilt it down ever so slightly. You got to be careful. I'm going to tilt it down ever so slightly. You got to be careful when you do this that you don't do it too much, because you can get that pan to where it sits too low and there's not enough travel in that pan for the trap to actually fire. So there's just a little adjustment there, and we're going to check it. All right, so we've got that trap armed again. Make sure we're recording there. So we've got that trap armed again. Got to put it into, or we've got the trap set. We've got to arm it and put it into that night latch. So we're going to pull it down. There's our click. So we're ready to go. And now you can see that pan has it's just ever so slightly tilted down. And that's just going to help that screen wire pan cover run off up under this loose jaw better and not create a bubble right there, okay? Nice and flat with a little slight downward angle. And all it takes is just a little bit of push on this right here to get that, okay? Now that we've got our angle set on our pan, we've got our pan tension set, we've got to apply our anchor chain. I run chain style anchors on my traps with a Fox Hollow Super Stake end. And this has been my favorite way to do it. You can do the cables. I like the chain because when you drive it down in the hole, if you don't drive it all the way down in there and you end up with some chain sticking up, you see how that just kind of lays over, okay? The cable, that stiff loop, it'll tend to stick up into the trap bed, and as you'll see in later videos, bedding your trap rock solid is super important. You want that thing set up to where it's not gonna move at all. So I'm gonna take this anchor chain right here and I'm gonna attach it to my trap using a J-hook. So I've got my J-hooks right here. Got my J-hooks. And the J-hook is going to go into the crunch proof swivel and then into place just like that. There you go. And then I can take that and run it through that link of chain, okay? And then using a set of J-hook pliers, again, you can get all this stuff from Southern Snare Supply. Brian's got everything you need. Using a set of J-hook pliers, I'm going to take that and I'm going to close that J-hook, okay? Just like that, all the way down, okay? So now we've got the crunch proof swivel right here and we've got our anchor chain attached. The next step is I'm going to weld this J-hook shut. The reason for that, you notice on the top side it's not welded, and immediately underneath the trap it's not welded either. The reason for that is when I go to pull these traps, I'm going to drive this anchor into the ground up to this swivel, okay? It puts a tremendous amount of force on these anchors when you're driving them into the ground, especially when you get into some of the super hard stuff that we encounter. But more so on the pulling side, I can hook this with my trap puller and pull it out, and I don't have to worry about this J-hook opening back up. Once the J-hook opens back up, you want to throw it away. that metal will fatigue and it can compromise the strength of that J-hook. But this is a brand new J-hook. We've closed it, and now we're going to weld it shut. We're going to get our welder ready to go here. I do not claim to be a professional welder. I am self-taught, so do not critique me on my skills. What I do is good enough for me, and that's all that matters. So we're going to get set up here. It doesn't take much, just a little bit. Get this to lay right. Alright. So, get our helmet on. Some gloves, and we're just going to put a little spot right. We're just going to put a little spot right there on that J-hook. There we go. Test my feed and we're working. All right, let's see. There we go. See that right there? We got our J-hook welded shut. Just gonna drop it in this bucket of water. Quench that and cool it off. So just like that, we're ready to wax. Just like that, we've got our anchor chain on our trap. We've got our tag on there. Our pan tension's right. Our angle of our pan is right. We're ready to wax this trap. Alright, couple things on the wax. You don't want to burn the wax. If you do end up burning the wax, it means you get it too hot, it'll start smoking, it'll take on a burnt smell, and that's a negative smell that we don't want on our trap. So just keep an eye on it. Be real careful with the temperature, and it's also flammable, so you don't want to expose the liquid to an open flame, and you know, so that's why I'm in the shop doing it. It takes a really long time for this wax to melt in this quantity, and you don't have to do it this way. Everything that I've showed you is not the way, it's the way I do it. Some folks will bring a pot of water to a boil and put a small amount of wax in there, and the wax will actually sit on top of the water, and they'll dip their trap down into the water to get it to the temperature, you know, get that metal to the temperature of the water, and then they just slowly pull it up through that wax layer. Not my favorite way to do it. I like just the pot of wax and completely submerging it. But anyway, we're starting to get to a point where this wax is almost ready. And like I said, it's been a little while trying to get it here because, like I said, I've got 6 or 7 pounds of wax in this pot. My little rod that I would fish my traps out with. It's still got a little bit of a donut of wax on there, as you can see, but we're gonna get it melted and get the rest of these traps in there. There we go, we can fish that out there. All right, you can see that rod. That rod is the same temperature as that wax because it's been sitting in there, okay? And it's got just a real thin, shiny coat on there, and that's what you want on the trap. On this other end, you can see where the rod On this other end, you can see where the rod took on, was exposed to the air temperature, so it was cooler, and the wax is a lot thicker up here. That's what you don't want, okay? Nice thin coat, let your traps heat up to the same temperature of the wax, and when you pull them out, let it drip dry for a second, and that's what you'll end up with. And I believe we're good to go. So I'm gonna grab this trap and get it in there. All right, so we've got our finished trap. We're ready to go into the wax. The last thing that I'll do to these traps is right here on these spring pins, okay? If this was a 4-coiled trap, there would be another set of springs sitting on this pin. There's 2 of them in the front. I'll take a pair of pliers and I'll grab those spring pins, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bend them down and out. Just like that. Grab the other one. Okay, do the same thing. I'm left-handed, so I gotta swap hands. Take the other one, same thing. Grab it and just go down and out. And so what that's going to do, when you go to bed that trap into the ground, that's going to give that trap some feet and make it that much more stable when we're bedding our trap. And we'll get to that in some later videos, but location and trap bedding is probably the most important that you get it right. So got our spring pins bent down, got our anchor chain on here, tags, pan tension set, adjustment of the pan is where we want it. So now we're going to get this thing into the wax, and I've got gloves on for this process because once this trap gets that coat of wax on it, I don't handle them with my bare hands anymore. So I'm just going to take this chain and I'll wrap it around this trap like that, okay? And that's what I have this little fisher here for. I will just slowly dip that thing down into the wax, okay? And the reason I like to use this big pot with all the wax in it is because I can get that trap completely submerged in there. I can actually get a couple of traps in there at a time, but for video purposes, we're going to do this one right now just so you can see it, and then I've probably got 20 more over there that I'm going to wax and get ready to go in the ground that are already set up. So, like I said, we're going to leave that trap in there. It's going to take a few minutes for that trap to reach the temperature of the wax so that it takes on a thin coat. If you reach in there and you pull it out, and especially on the base plate, around the springs where some of the thicker metal is, you go to pull it out and you see that white wax on there, you want to put it back down in there and leave it for just a bit longer. So like I said, you just want a really thin, shiny coat of wax on there. We got some showers passing through today, and this is a perfect rainy day activity. So I'm going to give it a little check, reach in there and see if I can hook it. And as I pull it out, you can see there on the base plate we've got some real thick wax on the jaws, so we need to leave that thing in there and let it reach that temperature. You can see this right here is doing the same thing. So we're just going to leave it in there a bit longer and let it reach that same temperature. So our trap has been in there for a minute. Let's see if we can hook it. Now the chain's going to fall off of it. But I'm sitting there looking at that trap, and that is a nice thin coat of wax on the entirety of that trap. All right, so I've got a nice thin shiny coat of wax on my trap. I'm just going to let it drip dry for a second. This is down here on the anchor chain, so it's going to be below the dirt. But I'm going to shake that anchor and get the wax out of there. I don't want to build up of wax inside that anchor. But the trap itself looks really good. And I'm going to take it out here and set it over here on the fence and let it dry. And then she'll be ready to go in the ground. So I'm going to get it hung up and get the rest of these traps in there. All right, what I've got here is a trap from last year. You can see it's still not completely dark brown like some of the rest of them, but we're going to get it in the wax and let it get good and coated. Again, just want to leave that thing sitting there, let it become the same temperature as the wax so it doesn't take on too thick of a coating. And once it's done that, we'll pull it out. It'll be nice and shiny with a super thin layer on there, and we'll hang it up and let it air dry, and we'll be ready to go. I've got about 25 traps to go. I'm gonna get them dipped up. Thanks for watching. Again, like I said, the traps that I use, the methods that I use to prepare them and rig them up for the field, and then as you'll see in some later videos, how I go about choosing locations and sets that I make. That's not the way to do it, that's just my way to do it. So there's a lot of good information out there. I would encourage you to get in touch with the Georgia Trappers Association. Great organization to support, and lots of information out there. A lot of seasoned trappers, they have events throughout the year where you get together and can attend some classes from some seasoned veterans, and learn a lot of stuff and network and meet folks that you can share ideas with. But thanks for watching, man. I hope that some of you are going to get inspired from this and take it upon yourself to get out there and do some trapping on ground that you actually have access to. We spend, here in Georgia, we spend about 3.5 months out of the year trying to hunt these deer, and so it's always good when the season ends to give a little something back, and removing these predators from your property, whether it be for the deer or the turkeys, it's going to give them a little bit of breathing room when it's time to have those babies, and maybe cut down on that mortality rate. So like I said, thanks for watching. There's going to be a lot more coming up. We're going to go all the way through this from A to Z. This is just the beginning stages, so stay tuned and hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks.